Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Sheila Bet. I decided to make a YouTube video about my 30-day social media cleanse. So I just finished my social media cleanse 3 days ago and it was quite an interesting experience. So why did I choose to do a social media detox? I guess there were many different things that prompted it, but I realized, because I've been journaling a lot in the last couple of years, I would say, I realized that I started thinking about it in March this year, but I didn't think about it seriously, and I ended up using so much social media. At that point, the reason why I wanted to go off was mostly because of COVID and other just very negative news that was going on online. COVID, the Black Lives Matter movement, just a lot of stuff that affects your mood, makes you a little bit more, sad all the time and stuff like that. So I just wanted to kind of control how much stuff I consume over time. And at that time it didn't really make sense to do it or that was my only source of, I guess, connection with the outside world. So I just carried on. But then I realized about 2 months ago that I was waking up early in the morning and the first thing I did was grab my phone and just start scrolling. And sometimes I would do that if I woke up super early, because I've been doing this experiment which I'll talk about later, where I don't wake up with an alarm clock. I try to let myself wake up naturally. So I started to wake up around 6:15. I would just, like, my sleep is done and I'm ready to get up. So I wake up at 6:15 and then I pick up my phone. Next thing you know, I'm scrolling and there's not really so much that I'm seeing, no real news or anything, just pure entertainment, and I'm scrolling and then I would check the time and 2 hours would have passed, or in worst days 3 hours would have passed. So I guess after a while I realized, oh well, that's not really healthy. So I decided to try and mitigate it, or try and just control how much time I spend online. So I started on the 18th of November and I finished on the 17th of December. And how I started was I got rid of, actually I did kind of do a test run before I started the proper 30-day social media cleanse. So in my test run, I would uninstall the apps from my phone and completely, basically log out, uninstall. And so if I really wanted to go online and see what's going on, or if I felt like I was missing out on anything, I'd have to go to my Play Store, reinstall, log back in. And most people have these apps on their phone, or have had them for years. So sometimes you don't even remember your login details, like you forget your password and things like that. So I would have to remember my password. It was just a process going back online, because having to log back in, having to reinstall the app made it a little harder to go back on. So I would take a little more time out, and then when I did go back on, I would scroll and realize I really haven't missed out on much, and that I don't really need to be online for the most part. So that's when I thought, okay, this can work. So I watched a couple of videos, some people on YouTube who were talking about their experiences with either going off social media completely or going off for a couple of days. So I started with Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. The one I use the most is Instagram, but as well as YouTube actually. But I didn't really consider YouTube to be social media. So I got rid of Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And then after a few days, I was really spending a lot of time on YouTube. So I realized if I was going to be honest with myself, I needed to get rid of YouTube as well. So I did that under 30 days, but still I think it counts as a social media cleanse. So what was it like? It was really interesting. The first day when I got off, I was so productive. I woke up my usual 6:15. I got up, had my coffee and sat on my laptop and was just on it. I was creating, I was just doing all kinds of things, and I was going the whole day until evening, and I was done. And I felt like, wow, so this must be what it's like to not have distractions, because I was really focused and nothing was distracting me. I mean, because nothing existed to distract me at that point in time. And I was like, wow, this is gonna be nice. I think I'm going to enjoy being off social media. But the weird thing is, a few days later, I kind of just went back to my default, I guess, except I wasn't going online, but my energy levels were just probably like flatlined. So I wasn't so energetic, but I was still a lot more productive because I didn't have distractions. First, to detox and just spend some time out of it and have a more deliberate way in which I use social media. So just first to be aware of how I use it and if I use it in the most productive way for myself, because I wasn't feeling like that was the case. Another reason why I got off was to reflect a little bit more, because I was feeling a little bit hazy, I would say, which I suppose most people at this point are feeling this way, because 2020 has been a strange year in many ways. And it's been strange because we've been locked in, a lot of us have been locked in, have been just not living life the way we're used to. So I think there's a way that that has affected the mind somehow, and it's different in different degrees for different people. For me, it was in the last 2 months or so, I just was very unclear about a whole bunch of things. So I needed time to kind of just sit down with myself without any distractions and get that clarity that I needed. Another reason I chose to go off social media was to create more. So I remember, I think probably last year, I had this journal and I'd written down, because I've always been quite a big consumer, and that's because a large part of my work involves using social media and consuming content, really. So I found out that I was consuming a lot more than I was creating, and I wanted to create space for my creativity. So I decided to go off social media for that reason. One of the strange things that happened during the social media cleanse was I would actually get bored. Which is so funny, because I think I forgot what that feels like to be bored. Because I was never in a space where I had nothing to do and I had nothing to keep me busy. So if I was bored, I was probably on my phone watching interesting videos on YouTube, or I was watching things on Instagram and Facebook, talking to people and stuff like that. So I realized, because I had all this time to just be quiet and be with myself and reflect on life and everything in between, I had moments where I was just like, okay, what to do? It was so strange. It was really, really strange, but interesting. And recently, actually, just a week, I think, before the first time I felt bored, I'd read an article from Medium, and this lady was talking about how it's really important for our mind to have that break, that boredom that we feel, or spaciness in the middle of the day or whatever, is actually the mind's way of resting and also creating. So I think it was a good thing. So one of the cool things that I got to do, because I had more time to myself, was actually do things that I enjoy doing that I didn't think I had time, because I was wasting my time elsewhere. So one of the cool things I got to do was draw a little bit more. So that's one of the sketches I did while I was on the social media cleanse, and it was just really fun because I draw once in a while. I've always done that since I was a kid, but I would have really big gaps in between where I wasn't drawing at all, and I realized that it's something that's very therapeutic for me. So I draw just to relax and to kind of be in a space of not thinking, but it's still active. So I actually ended up doing more active things rather than passive things, which social media is quite passive, to be honest. So yeah, I drew, I painted a bit. I went to an event where we were painting and having some wine with friends and talking about body positivity and that sort of thing. I also was, you know how when you wake up in the morning, I don't know how most people do it, but for me, when I wake up and I'm making my coffee in the morning, I'm usually watching a video on YouTube. So I would have to just kind of quietly make my coffee and just be more mindful, be in the moment, and enjoy the moments, and just have moments where I was looking outside and not thinking about anything or listening to anybody else but my own self or my own inner voice or my own mind. I was reading Wangari Maathai's Unbowed, and I think I'd started mid-year or something, my reading had become super slow because I'd only read a few pages at the end of the night, just before I go to sleep. So I actually ended up finishing it. It was a really good book, the kind I would pick up again. I also started a new book, and I actually added a few other books. I actually realized, wow, I really enjoy reading, and it's also a way to grow as a person, because you learn so much when you read, so much more at least than when you learn when you're just online socializing. The reason why I went off social media is not necessarily because social media is a bad thing. It's just, as anything else, when you overdo something, it can be bad for you. So that's one of the reasons why I quit social media for a little bit. I learned, especially during the lockdown, at some point I was spending a lot of time on my own for a couple of months actually. And so the only way that I connected with the outside world was through social media and other, online sites like blogs and websites and such. So I found that there was a lot of just narrative being thrown at me, all these different stories, news, and things that were happening that people felt were important to talk about, and most of the time were important to talk about. But sometimes it was as if there was nothing that was mine. Everything was just coming from the outside, and I was constantly bombarded by information that I felt like I either had to digest, or that traumatized me in one way or another, or that just preoccupied me so much that I couldn't be with myself in a healthy way. I couldn't sit and do what I wanted. I couldn't prioritize what was important at that point to think about. So I think, in that sense, it was really important to kind of get rid of the outside voices for a little bit and ask myself, okay, what am I interested in at the moment? What do I want to talk about? What do I want to spend my time thinking about? So that was really useful for that, because even just going off made me realize just how much, from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you're going to sleep, there are just constant suggestions being thrown at you. And there's ways that this is okay, but for the most part, really, it's not very healthy. Another fun thing I got to do was just basically take care of my plants and learn a little bit more about them. So I think there's a lot of really cool things we used to do that we don't do as much now that we have all these different online distractions. And I don't know if you notice when you're out and there's people who maybe are sitting at a table together and they hardly exchange words, and they're just constantly on their phone. Sometimes it's even so funny because some people will send messages to each other while sitting next to each other instead of talking, which is supposed to be, the most natural way that human beings communicate. So I guess, it's kind of going back to the old school in a little way, but also, just coming back to yourself. The 30 days were winding down, especially say from around the 26th day. I started thinking about how do I go about social media from now on? Because if I'm going to take a 30-day detox, I should come out with some kind of lessons learned or some kind of change that I'm going to make based on what I've learned during the detox. So I realized that there were certain social media sites that I didn't really use much and were not necessarily useful for me or didn't fit with my brand. I decided to stay on Instagram and Facebook. I deactivated my Twitter, which had been on for quite a few years. I've had it for a few years, but I've never really been that active on it except for work. So I deactivated it, and this was a really freeing experience for me. This was really positive, and I think it's necessary. I was talking to my friends about it, and I learned that a lot of people actually do some kind of detox at some point in the year. Maybe they just take a break for a week or a few days. So I would definitely recommend it. I think every once in a while it's nice to step back and just observe things from a vantage point rather than always being in them. So I would definitely recommend social media detox, and I've really enjoyed mine. I might take them every so often. I'm pretty sure I will. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you would consider taking time off social media, or if you don't think it's necessary, how would you use it, or how do you personally use it? Do you use it in a deliberate way, or do you find yourself sometimes just being pulled into black holes of information after information or picture after picture? Yeah, I'd like to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Sheila Bett.